Hello, I'm Lynn Sullivan with Strategic Design and Company Real Estate. And today I wanted to share with you why I am optimistic about the real estate market. So over the last several weeks, I've been asked by a lot of people, what's going on? What are we seeing in real estate? And I have to say that it's been pretty steady. Of course, we are into the spring months, and usually we have an uptick in activity, which we haven't seen, but I'm still optimistic about what to expect moving forward. So why do I feel that way? One of the things that I wanted to share with you is just some information about past markets and what we can learn from them in order to build a framework for what to expect moving forward. So right now, there's certainly a level of uneasiness and uncertainty about the future that we really haven't seen in my lifetime. We've been through a lot of difficulties in our nation and economy over the past 40 to 50 years, and the real estate market really shows the scar. So what we're facing right now, though, is entirely new. And the effects of that, well, they remain to be seen. So one thing's for sure is that I'm noticing just a level of ingenuity and resiliency in our current community. So to start, we need to look back at what was going on back in the 80s. So if you remember back then, home prices were on the rise. Everything was going really well, and home prices peaked in 1989. Then we experienced the savings and loan crisis correction, and that's kind of what they called it. And in 1990, we began a recession, and that lasted well into the spring of 1991. So not a long recession, but the housing market actually continued to fall for the next 7 years. So for a total of 8 years, the first year we saw a 7% decrease in home prices, and then it was about 1% for each year after that, for a total of 14% drop from the peak in 1989. So this market correction was very long and very slow. We kind of got used to it, actually, and there wasn't much we could do about it. There also wasn't a whole lot of concern over it either. We may have seen the occasional news report, but it really just stayed in the background. So much so that the 1990s were actually considered an economically prosperous time despite the housing market. So from that, over the next few years, the market began to climb again. Only this time, it was rapid. Starting from the market low in 1997, home prices soared really fast, with increases of 25% in some cities and then up to 50% in others. This is what set the stage for the largest drop that I've seen in my lifetime. And from there, bring in the dot-com bubble. And then the Great Recession of 2007, where home prices just plummeted. So this market correction was very different from the previous one. It affected the entire country, while the previous correction in the 1990s really only affected a few major cities. And this time, the news broadcasts were different. They were relentless. You heard story after story of homeowners having to walk away from upside down mortgages. There were short sales, which I'd never heard of at that point, foreclosures, and lots of bankruptcy, and entire neighborhoods even that were abandoned. So over the course of 5 years, real home prices fell back to levels seen in 1990 and in 2000. So we had a jump in home prices of 25 to 50%. That completely went away. And so we saw that same level of depreciation as we saw increase before. So since that market bottomed out, the real estate market overall has slowly improved each year relatively minimal, so 2% to 4% year over year. And what this has done is it's created a very stable market. Enter in 2020. The forecasts were all really positive. There were a lot of new home builds. There were there was a lot of activity going on, and home prices were still on the rise. Inventory was low, but interest rates were at record lows. And so this still kept home buyer interest high, and sales were steady. So just as we were setting up for the spring selling market, everything looked great. And then the coronavirus. So from there, we started with a shelter in place recommendation, and then a stay-at-home order in many states across the country. Commerce slowed, and in some industries and states, it completely stopped. Rather than seeing the usual spring surge in listings, things pretty much remained the same. They were steady. It was almost like a repeat of January and February, but well into April. So with this new unknown, everyone's talking about the effect you're going to see, like what should you expect in the real estate market? But it's really all just speculation, and no one has any definitive answers. So that aside, there's still a lot of positive things happening in the real estate market, at least in some areas. So just as with the savings and loan crisis correction in the 1990s, that was felt differently across the country. With COVID-19, you're seeing the effects of that differently across the country. And I expect the post-COVID-19 market to be different state to state and city by city as well. There's just such a tremendous disparity between the effects of COVID-19 in, let's say, metropolitan areas versus more rural communities. But there's also another layer of factors contributing to the economy of different states and cities, and it's based on the level of market shutdown. So while some areas, as you know, are in total lockdown mode, others are taking things in stride, implementing precautions while they continue with as much normal business as usual, and as possible. You couple that with the strong and stable market that we had going into this, and real estate has a good chance of just seeing a slow or minimal correction compared to the drop in the 1990s and just the tremendous recession we saw in 2007. And I would also expect that the recovery will be much quicker as well. So while I can't speak to what's going to happen across the country, I can speak to what is happening in my own market now. So I'm here in Tennessee, and we are in a very slow spring market for sure. It does feel more like February than April in terms of the number of home listings and sales. But on the flip side, we're also seeing an increase in land listings and sales, as well as construction startups. So that's really good news. My pipeline of new listings is full, and most are just waiting for the stay-at-home order to be eased before putting their home on the market. And we're hoping to see that happen in the next few weeks come May. So others are actually, I have several that are planning to list in May either way, because what we have here in Cumberland County is an ever steady vacation home market. And that is continuing seemingly unabated. So many of our sellers' homes are vacant here in the winter months because their primary home is in the more southern climate. So it's warmer in the winter in the south. So they have their vacation home here in Tennessee, and it's vacant in the winter. We also have the flip side of that, where we have vacant homes in the summer months for folks who have a primary home up north in colder climates. So as a result, vacation home listings remain steady. And then on the other side of that, we have buyers that plan years in advance to move to our town to retire, and they're not as affected by economic shifts. We're still seeing those who had planned ahead to move here in the spring buying homes now. And many of the homes they're buying are vacant because that's the majority of what we have listed. So, and this just remains a large part of our market base. It always has been. Interest rates remain low. So this is also encouraging buyers who were otherwise ready to buy a home to go ahead and move forward with those plans. The other piece of the puzzle is what are agents doing? So they're really taking this in stride, and I see everyone working together to maintain social distancing and implementing other creative measures to ensure the safety of their clients. Overall, the market is slow, but it's steady. So don't get me wrong, we are not without inconvenience or casualty during this crisis. Like the rest of the country, our sit-down restaurant services are closed, but a lot of the restaurants have made up for that in carry-out and delivery service, at least to some degree. Grocery stores and fast food establishments are hiring, and those who are willing and able to work are getting paid well to do so. Some small businesses have reverted to selling online, holding auctions on social media, and using curbside pickup. There are a number of small businesses, though, that have had to close altogether. I would say the hardest hit are probably the professionals who work in the personal service industry. So your hairdressers, salons, nail care, estheticians, even medical service providers like chiropractors, dentists, and orthodontists are feeling the slow economy with significant drops in business. For all of these folks, the loss is certainly greater, and the speed of their recovery will likely be slower as well. I'm not a fortune teller, but I am an optimist. And I believe this is not the quiet before the storm. It's just a deep breath, waiting for a sigh. When the fresh air comes, we will breathe again in more ways than one. Meanwhile, what I see happening behind the scenes in real estate offices here in Tennessee, and I suspect across the country, is helping to build professional relationships and cooperation so that when the time comes, we're well prepared to meet the needs of buyers and sellers. The spring market will come. I believe that. Maybe before summer does. I sure hope so. It will likely be a bit slower than expected, but I think it's also just going to last a little bit longer and level itself out just in time for the fall market jump that we usually see in September and October before the holidays. Either way, if I've learned anything from the markets in the past, it's this: we'll get through it. We're already learning new and innovative ways of serving our clients, and we will recover in style, just as we have done in the past. So I'm Lynn Sullivan with Strategic Design and Company Real Estate. I hope this has helped you have a more positive outlook about what to expect in the real estate market moving forward. And wherever you are, live beautifully. Thanks for tuning in.